Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Guthals, and welcome to another Reactor stream on the Microsoft Developer Twitch, or you might be watching this on our YouTube channel. I am hoping for decent bandwidth. I've been having some trouble. Oh, hang on. Sorry, there was probably some echo. I think the camera mic was on. That should be fixed now. Yeah, so today I'm going to be exploring some Azure stuff. I don't know exactly where we're going to go today. It's kind of like a let's explore together kind of thing. So checking out. The bandwidth was really good just now, so I'm hoping it stays that way. Today, I think I'm going to jump into... Oh gosh. Well, that's not going to work. Never mind. I am going to do some... I think I'm going to do some like Azure web hosting. So like create a web application and host it on Azure. Because I feel like when we're talking about Azure APIs, and actually let me turn my camera off. When we're thinking about Azure APIs, really what we're thinking about is how we can integrate so many different parts of Azure into something that we're building. And one way of doing that is through a website. The bandwidth seems to be crapping out. All right, hopefully with turning off the camera, it helps. So let me know in the comments if it doesn't. It doesn't seem to be freezing anymore. Okay, so I was just kind of talking about this with a friend of mine. I was showing them Azure, and they were trying to prepare for an interview on one of the Microsoft teams. And they aren't preparing for a technical interview per se, not to build a piece of Azure, but rather to create content around Azure and things like that. And they know a little bit about Azure. They've done a few things, but they were a little bit nervous about trying to create something or trying to prepare for something where they would be asked anything about Azure. And I kind of laughed because Azure does so much, and this isn't necessarily a commercial for Azure. I'm sure like AWS and GCP, I'm sure all of the other ones do all of the things too, but that's kind of the point, right? And so when we're talking about Azure APIs, we're really talking about everything that Azure can do and how we can integrate that into our apps. And so if we look at kind of all of the types of resources that Azure offers, some of them are for developing the app in the first place, right? So like where you can host it and all of that. But there's also just a lot of features that allow you to integrate some of the powers of Azure, like AI or cognitive services or computer vision. And you can see here, like this is the Azure Marketplace. There's a bunch of different categories here, and this is just some of them. And then here are just the featured categories for AI and machine learning. And when you click into it, you can see there's just so many different options for AI and machine learning. And these aren't even all of them, right? So this is like, here's some for automated ML. Here's some ML services things. Here's some cognitive services things. If we click into cognitive services, now all of a sudden we have all of these things that you can do, and you can even load more. So my point here is not to say that this is necessarily overwhelming. I mean, it can be, but not to overwhelm you. Is this about Azure API M? API M. I don't know if I know what that means. I'm looking that up. Oh, API management. Just about Azure APIs in general. So not about Azure API management. Good question, though. So there's just a lot of different things that you can start to integrate. And unfortunately, the interview that I had with Anne Loomis Thompson on Monday the bandwidth wasn't great. So we're going to re-record that and get that up on YouTube soon. But there are teams at Microsoft whose job it is to take a look at our customer-facing APIs and try to make them like equal in a sense. So actually, let me pull that up real quick. It's pretty amazing. Where did that go? Oh, that link is no longer there. Here, I know where I can find the link because I put it on our Reactor GitHub repo. So if you haven't seen our Reactor GitHub repo, you can check out, we link all of our resources here. But what I wanted to show you was the Azure SDK is open source. It's available. You can see kind of the development of it. You can see all of the languages for it. You can see the design guidelines, the repository for each language, and the documentation for each language. So I'll paste this down in the chat. And because Azure has so many different, resources and features, etc., we have hundreds and thousands of people working on all of the parts of Azure. And so that can become an issue because each team who's working on one of these features is likely developing it in a way that makes sense for them, which makes sense. But they don't necessarily know how all of the other teams are developing their APIs. So the folks who are building the cognitive services APIs for our customers are thinking about different things and different workflows and different experiences than the folks who are building our DevOps services or our developer tool services or our Internet of Things services. So that can be a challenge because, like I said, there are hundreds of people working on all of these different services, and we all collectively want to serve our customers. But something that's difficult is that our customers are likely touching a bunch of these different services. And so one thing that we've tried to do at Microsoft more recently, and you'll hopefully get to see that video where I interviewed Anne about this, is we're trying to make sure that all of our APIs make sense. So when you want to authenticate with Azure in Python, that experience API-wise is similar to when you want to authenticate with Java, is similar to when you want to authenticate with C#. The 4 languages that we focus on to start with at Microsoft are .NET or C#, Java, JavaScript, and Python. So .NET and Java are our 2 enterprise languages and frameworks. JavaScript and Python are our community ones. These are the ones that our customers have said are the most popular for either enterprise or community. You can see, though, that we're starting to explore other languages as well, like Go, C, C++, and then also some mobile development like iOS and Android. You can start to see some of the design guidelines, and you can even check out the repositories for this. So, for example, if I wanted to check out what's going on with our Azure SDKs and APIs for, well, the SDK and then therefore the APIs for C, we can see what the team is thinking, how they're approaching this, what they're working on. You can go into the issues and start to explore that and kind of understand how we're approaching solving this problem. And it's really neat because we have folks whose job it is to think about the design across all languages and across all features. And then we have specific teams who are focusing on the languages and the features. So for example, Anne focuses on .NET, and she specifically has been focusing on the form recognizer, text analytics, and app services. I'm sure will do other things as well, but those are the 3 she's focused on now. So if you come in here into the .NET repository, for example, you can start to see if we go into issues and we check out some of these labels, we can scroll down into some of the cognitive services, and we can see here's the text analytics. And so Anne is probably one of the folks who's working on these, which is kind of neat. So if you're really excited about Azure APIs and the SDKs that we're developing, I highly recommend that you check out this higher level repository, which you can find here. I linked it there, and it'll be linked in the YouTube video description as well. It's also linked to from our Reactor repo, and I have a short link for you for that, at least for August's, which is when this is streaming. Great. So all that is to say that there are a lot of services. When I first joined Microsoft, cognitive services had different subscription keys even. So, each of the cognitive services was being developed differently than like they were obviously chatting with each other, but each cognitive service had a team of people who were thinking about it. And so we're moving towards trying to make it easier for our customers to use and integrate all of our Azure services into their products and services as well. All right. So we can get out of all of those repos. So like I was saying, one thing that I was thinking of was that we could start by seeing what it's like to create a web application and host it using Azure App Services. Because I could imagine a world where, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. I could imagine a world where you want to start integrating some of the other services into this web app. And so this might be kind of like the first step for that. I think I'm probably going to be using Visual Studio Code for this, and it does require an Azure subscription. So as a reminder, we do have free trials for Azure. So if you haven't signed up for Azure before, you can go ahead and get a free trial. And it's 12 months of the free services plus the $200 credit. So it's a year. If you are a student, meaning you go to a university and you have a .edu email address, we also have a student free trial. Okay, so you will need an active Azure subscription. I just have a pay-as-you-go subscription. So so we're going to get started with all of this. I also, like I said, have Visual Studio Code installed. My Visual Studio Code, I did already install the Azure extension. So let's go ahead and take a look at the extensions that I have. I have the Azure Account extension. This allows me to authenticate with Azure from inside of Visual Studio Code, which is really useful because then I can authenticate my development environment and start using these resources that I put on Azure. I do not have an agenda for this session. We're just going to be exploring. Likely, what we're going to do is create and host a web application with Azure App Services. But Thursdays, the long morning Thursdays, are really just for code exploration and kind of seeing what we want to build and getting your inputs as well. So it's more of a conversation, so not a strict agenda. I also have some other things. The Python extension, this one in particular, I really like because I usually am working in Jupyter Notebooks. So if you read the description of this session on the meetup page for the Reactors, the end of it said likely fail with me because that's kind of the point. Is this is something that I don't normally spend a lot of time on. I'm usually in the data science, machine learning world using Jupyter Notebooks, and I want to explore more of the Azure APIs, and so that's what we're doing today. So I will let you know if we use any of the other extensions, but that's the one that I have installed right now. All right. Let's see. So actually, I think we want to get our development environment set up first. So before we get started, you can actually do this in whatever development environment you prefer. If you're in Eclipse or IntelliJ or Visual Studio proper, this will still work. There will be slightly different instructions for it, obviously. But I am planning on using Visual Studio Code. And if you haven't already, here is the link for installing Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is free and available on pretty much all platforms, Windows, Linux, and Mac. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is make sure that we've got Visual Studio Code installed and make sure that we're aware of the extensions marketplace, which we just talked about. Next, we're going to install an extension that I don't yet have, which is the Azure App Services extension. So I'm just going to go ahead and search for this. Here it is. And I'm going to install that. And while I am, you can see that there are some details about this extension. And actually, let me just show you Visual Studio Code. So this is the extension that I'm using. Oh, wow. That didn't paste very well, did it? That was weird. Let's try this one. There we go. I didn't mean to grab that one. There you go. Okay. The neat thing is that you can also see that on this extensions homepage, sorry, let me zoom in. We do have some installation guides, and then also like, here's how you deploy your first Node.js app to Azure. So if you wanted to do that, you can do that. There's also ways of contributing to this repository, meaning the extension itself, and information about telemetry and code of conduct and such. It's really exciting for me, what I learned from Anne last week or earlier this week, looking at these SDKs and having them be public. We're doing so much at Microsoft that's just out in the open. So if you're really passionate about any of these, you are likely to be able to find a way to contribute beyond just using it and filling out like a feedback form. So that's something that I really, really appreciate. For example, here is the Azure App Services, or App Service. I keep adding an S. Open source repository. So if you do use this a lot and you notice something wrong with it, or you want to add something to it, or you just have ideas, you can head over here, check out the issues. You can file an issue, and see kind of what's going on in the world of developing this. So that's something that I really like. All right, so we'll head back to VS Code and yep, this is all just the same stuff and we've installed it. Perfect. All right. So now that we have this installed, we'll be able to start using it a lot. We'll be able to deploy to Azure a lot easier because we've got this installed into our IDE. And like I said, if you are in Eclipse, for example, there is an Azure toolkit for Eclipse that you can install. If you're in IntelliJ, there is an Azure toolkit for IntelliJ that you can install. And if you're in Visual Studio, similar to Visual Studio Code, during the installation process of Visual Studio, you can install the Azure development workload, which will include the app service extension or integration. But again, we're just gonna do it on Visual Studio Code. All right. So now that we've got that installed, we are going to try to create this web app that we're going to then host. The first thing that we're going to do is go back to the portal, the Azure portal, and create resources that we might need for this. For some services, on Tuesday, I explored the Azure Ml Sdk. And for example, there you can create the Azure Machine Learning service or resource inside of the portal by just going to create resource and then typing in machine learning and creating it here. You could also create it in Visual Studio Code, Azure ML SDK for Python. I think this is the one that shows. Yep, here it is. So, for example, you could create a data science virtual machine, and I thought there was, where did that go? Here it is. You could also create a workspace by basically, oh, sorry, no, this is still, sorry, my brain just kind of got messed up. This one is still showing creating it on the portal first. But anyways, you can create it from your code as well, but we're going to create it as long as you've been authenticated, but we're going to create it just through here. So we're going to search for app service. All right. We're going to do web app for this one. Notice that Azure App Service supports a lot of different types of app development as well, but we're going to just do a simple web app today. Okay. So notice that it runs on, or it supports a lot of different languages. So it's going to support Node.js, Python, Java, .NET, but then also Ruby and PHP. This one's specifically for Linux or Windows apps. It's going to allow us to scale easily. We can have the integrated support for our IDEs, continuous integration, and also diagnostics, monitoring, and alerting features. All right, so let's go ahead and create this web app. I'm going to use my pay-as-you-go subscription. I'm going to create a new resource group. I'm just going to call it August 20th. And my web app name, let's call it Og20 Stream. So this is going to be where my web app gets hosted, or where you can access my hosted web app. og20stream.azurewebsites.net. Obviously, this doesn't exist yet. Web sites, right? Yeah. See? But once we do this, it will. Okay. For publish, this basically is, do we want to deploy our application as code or a ready-to-run Docker image? So a Docker image will activate the tab of this wizard, the setup wizard, where we provide information about the Docker registry, where we will retrieve our image. Today, we're just going to do a simple code deployment. So we're going to keep it as code. For runtime stack, this is where we're going to choose which language we're in. And actually, let me try to remember what Python I'm in. Python. close that. I think I'm going to do 3.7. Oops, not Ruby. Try to remember what my environment is set up in. And I'm going to choose West US because that's where I'm at. One thing to notice is that different Azure services are offered in different regions at the moment. Or not, just like in general. So it is important to make sure that you can find or the region that's closest to you that does support that service. All right. For operating system, it's forcing a Linux, which is probably fine. And then because it's on Python. So that's just kind of where it's being hosted, not what I'm developing on. I'm currently developing on Windows. And then the region. And then the app services plan. So which plan do we want? It's only going to be showing us the plans that are available for this region and operating system that I selected. So if for some reason you wanted, you had an existing plan that you wanted to associate it with, and it wasn't there, it might have been on a different region or a different operating system. You can also change your size. I'm just going to keep it as the default one, because we're just doing some simple stuff for now. All right. You can go into the other details for like monitoring and all that, but I'm just going to go ahead and review and create. And create. All right. So you can see while the deployment is in progress, a bunch of different resources are going to be getting created. So again, this is one of the benefits of going through Azure is that we get a lot of different support for specific workflows. So rather than having to create everything from scratch, we allow Azure to kind of do it for us. So basically it created these two for us. So we can go to our resource. We can see that it's running. This is going to be our URL. So there's still nothing there yet. This is just going to be the default code that they have. It's kind of nice because from here, it links to the quick start guides. So this is a quick start to creating a Python app in Azure App Service on Linux. Tacos. Ooh, I want some tacos. Tacos sound yum. And then it also links to the deployment center if you have your code ready to go. Which is the one specifically for this one. But we don't have our code ready to go, so we're just going to come back. Okay. From here, we've got a lot of information about our service, our web app. Some of the more important things is like the status. Is it running? We're going to need access to our subscription ID, just verifying our subscription. If you did need to change it, you can change it here. You can stop your web app from running, restart it, and delete it. So these are going to be very important for when you're done exploring, or if you want to take a break. You don't necessarily want your web app to be running continuously because that will cause you will be paying for that. Still pretty bad lag. Let me know if other folks. Is it a lag? My voice and what is on screen? A couple other things that are useful here. One is the access control. So you can give folks access, like other people on your team, access to this particular resource. This is really useful if you're developing with like external folks in particular. So if you are paying for this Azure subscription, but you want someone else to help with the development, or even like just help debug something, or whatever it is, give access to it, you can add them as like gaining access to this service without having to give them access to your entire subscription, which you wouldn't want to do anyways. And then there's a bunch of other settings and things that we're not going to get into right this second, but I encourage you to continue to explore all of these. All right. So next, we're going to, hang on one second. We're going to start actually writing the code for our web app. So first, I'm going to open up my VS Code. And again, this is pretty new for me, so let's figure out how we do this. Let's open up the terminal. Hello, terminal. Actually, do I want to power? I want a bash terminal. Sorry, hang on. There we go. So what I just did there was I'm trying to create a bash terminal inside of Visual Studio Code. So it was creating PowerShell terminals, but I just changed my default shell to bash, and now I've got, so when I did that, sorry, I'm creating like a million terminals. When I did that, it chose the WSL bash, so the Windows Subsystem for Linux. Remember, this was, I could have also done the git bash, but why not do this one? Maybe, hopefully, crossing fingers that this will work. If you haven't done this, okay. Windows Subsystem for Linux. So if this is new to you, this is pretty cool. But it basically allows you to enable like a virtual Linux box, but it's more integrated into your environment. And the neat thing is that you can actually just open up a terminal. And let me just share my terminal with you. Let's go ahead and add in a window capture. It's going to be a little weird, but let's see if this even, oh, you don't even want to work. Why are you not showing? That's weird. Anyways, you can choose from all of these different Linux distributions. And then when you open up a terminal, you can choose from within the terminal whether you want to open up a PowerShell terminal, a basic command prompt, an Azure Cloud Shell if you've installed that, or one of the Linux distributions that you've installed. So from all within that one terminal, you can have all of those things. The other fun thing is that you can have your own, you can like set your own background for it and everything. So I have like a little GIF of me and my daughter at Disneyland in the background of my Ubuntu terminal. So inside of Visual Studio Code, I'm actually pulling in from that Linux distribution that I installed for WSL. All right. So let's go ahead and create a virtual Python environment here. So no, it didn't work. So do I not have it in here? Oh, gosh. Okay, let's go ahead and follow these instructions. Oh, wonderful. All right, so I need to install that. I forgot I was doing it on on my Windows environment, but now I want to do it on the Ubuntu environment. So trying to update that. In the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to create a simple Python. Actually, let me just check. I'm just going to triple check that this doesn't work in the, yeah, okay. We're going to create a simple Python web app, and it's going to be using Flask, and I've never done this in my life, so let's figure this out. Yes, the Visual Studio just entire ecosystem is absolutely phenomenal. Between code, VS Online, like Code Spaces, the Community Edition, I completely agree. I want to spend a significantly more time exploring everything that we have to offer. I got the great opportunity to do a workshop with Scott Hanselman not too long ago, and watching him just kind of navigate the entire world of Visual Studio Code, and Windows was just beautiful. And that comes from just spending a lot of time on it, and so I'm really excited. I want to do the same. Wait, what's wrong? No such file or directory for pip. Let's go ahead and search that. Let's see. I mean, we might need to do a pip install, so why don't we just do that? What was it? Upgrade pip? Is that? I'm trying to remember now. Yeah. Okay, hang on. Oh. No face cam. And you can't hear me at all? Let me double check my... Getting a error screen. Huh. Darn it. I'm still seeing it. Okay, I think you're back. Okay. My bandwidth still seems to be about the same, so crossing fingers that it sticks that way. Right now what we're looking for is, I have an error on this. Let me try doing this in the terminal just to make sure that I just want to see what happens if I try to run the same commands in the terminal versus inside of Visual Studio Code. It shouldn't be. Okay. All right, so now I'm in my virtual environment inside of my terminal. And what happens if I run pip install Flask here? Oh, that seems to be working. I don't know why. I think maybe it's because I opened Visual Studio Code in not from my virtual environment inside of the so if I'm inside of the terminal, which let me see if I can get this terminal to show for you all, because it's unfortunate that you can't see it. Terminal. Why won't you show up? It's so frustrating. Oh, there it goes. Okay, you're gonna get my honestly very distracting background, but it makes me happy. Oh my gosh, a gigabyte connection, that gigabits. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I had one option for internet where I live, and if I wanted to get Comcast, they said that I needed to pay them $30,000 to lay line to my house. Even though my neighbors have it, apparently it costs $30,000 for me to get it. I don't have $30,000. So yeah, we're really hoping something else happens. Okay. So let's go ahead. Yeah, let's go ahead and upgrade this as well. But it looks like Flask is installed, so that is good. So the next thing that we're going to do is let's actually open, after this pip installs, we're going to try to open code from this virtual environment instead. So let's see if this wants to work. And then I also want to pull in open Visual Studio Code from WSL. I just kind of want to make sure. Yeah, I should be able to just say code. You can also access more Visual Studio Code remote options by using to bring up the command palette and then type VS Code remote. You will see all of the remote options available. Ooh, let's try that. So let's check on this distribution. Okay, so that's done. Let me see if this works. I'm going to... Okay, so I don't have anything in here. Actually... I shouldn't have done that. Okay, let's make a directory web app. All right. And we're going to, let's actually, let's do it here. And let me try this. I don't know. Yay, it is working. While we're doing that, VS Code remote. What was that saying? There was something on this browser saying that you can do remote-WSL, remote explorer, focus on WSL targets. So that's what I wanted to see. remote, yeah. WSL. And then it was focus. Oh, okay. So remote explorer, not remote explore. Oh, here we go. Ha, look at that. That is pretty awesome. Oh, so I could either, very cool, very cool. I don't think you can see this one, but let me add in this window capture. Interesting. It seems like y'all are needing to constantly refresh, which does not seem great. What I'm showing you now is, so what I did was over here, I did Remote Explorer focus on WSL targets, and then it opened this Remote Explorer up and showed all my WSL targets, which I only have an Ubuntu one, and then I clicked on Connect to WSL, which opened up this window here, which you can see that it's downloading Visual Studio Code to that target. And yeah, we can go ahead and install there. And oh, fun. Why? See if this works instead. But you can see that this was actually doing the same thing over here on my terminal, because this is when it was installing Visual Studio Code. So I could have done this, and then if I did this now, it should open up. So there are two ways of getting into your WSL. I've discovered so far, two ways of getting Visual Studio to open, but to be targeting your WSL distribution. In my case, an Ubuntu distribution. One is by opening up WSL terminal in Ubuntu and then doing code and then your file name. And the other one is by opening Visual Studio locally, like your local Windows or Mac one, or Windows one because it's WSL, Windows one, and then opening up the command palette, opening the Remote Explorer, and then opening from there. So you can do either, which is pretty cool. All right. Too much lag. Your messages are getting twice in the chat, and it's too terrible to watch. Oh, this is frustrating. It seems to do this at an hour every time. I don't have a cap. Why is this happening? This is so frustrating. Okay, well, I've started recording locally. So I've started recording locally, and I think we should. I mean, I'll keep the stream going, but all right. So I'm going to keep moving forward. I'm going to keep checking on the chat. I put in the YouTube Reactor survey and the YouTube channel. Sorry, the YouTube channel and then the Reactor survey. And we'll put this one up as a part 2. I'm sorry, everyone. But the next thing that we're going to do, now that we have a Python file open inside of Visual Studio Code, targeting a Windows subsystem for Linux Ubuntu distribution, is create a Flask app. So from Flask, import Flask app equals Flask, and again, this is all very new to me. App route slash. So we're going to create a little HTML here. So basically what we're doing is creating the little page. So, oops, body. The little page, just the page. I don't know why I said little. So I'm going to have a header, my first web app. And then we're just going to close it all out. And added a new line at the end. All right, there it is. Pretty awesome. We're so cool. All right, so we're gonna save that. Now we have this application.py and bypy. Now what we're going to do is we're going to save this application, the requirements for this application, in a requirements.txt file. And to do that, we just have to do pip freeze so that it knows how to run this. All right. So if we want to test this now, we just need to export. So this is just testing it locally. We just need to export our app. And then run it. So, oh, wonderful. I don't know what this is. Oh, interesting. Rename the file to flask.py. It prevents import of the third-party Flask module because your file is searched first. Wait, but it's not named flask.py. Sorry, rename it from flask.py. Yeah, it's not. It's application.py. From Flask. Oh, sorry. I didn't capitalize Flask. So let's go back to here. That's what happened. Okay. There we go. Perfect. So now we should be able to open this up. So we can add in a second tab here. It's going to open up that same one. We can go back into web app. Sorry, was this not? Yeah, that was zoomed in. Okay. And let's go ahead and open this up. So